Good evening. This is John Bailey. This is People to be Heard, the program where people who have something to say have their say. And tonight you have John Sheehan, president of the Gedney Association, who has spearheaded the neighborhood movements and the support of 8 neighborhood associations to oppose the French-American school campus proposed for the former Ridgeway Country Club. John, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Right, back again. And I'd like to ask you, let's have an update. Where are we right now in this 6-year French-American school of New York?
Well, since Labor Day, when the city surprisingly agreed to, by a 4-3 vote, the stipulation of agreement, it was very quiet. Very little was submitted. I think it was really just a site plan was submitted by FASNY for an alternative plan. And one of the issues to be determined in the alternative plan was whether this parcel A, where they intended to build, was environmentally sensitive. We were very surprised by that because all the earlier documents from the Common Council said while there are certain other parcels that may have more significant environmental features, the whole property was environmentally sensitive because of its relationship to stormwater management, and the
Mamaroneck River.
The Mamaroneck River and tributaries to the Mamaroneck River. So we were very surprised by that. So we decided we needed to look into it. We engaged an environmental consultant to review it, and within the city's zoning regulations, there is a provision that if you're within 100 feet of a watercourse, that makes your site an environmentally sensitive site. And directly across Ridgeway from the former Ridgeway Country Club is a watercourse that's been there since the 1800s. Maps were shown at a recent meeting of the Common Council.
Maps on the slides. And
our consultant determined absolutely it's within 100 feet, and there was also some comment about there is wetland vegetation on the site. Interestingly, across this parcel is a culverted stream or watercourse that was piped, and it becomes open again as it goes into Westchester Hills. But curiosity of White Plains environmental law, because it's piped or culverted, it makes it not a stream. And interestingly, FASNY has one of its buildings essentially right on top of the stream. So it'll be interesting to see how that is analyzed and reviewed.
Well, let alone how it affects construction.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not a single-family home they're building. They're building a school proposing to build a school building that will have floor weights of a certain size. So you need a very strong foundation there, and just a question of.
Well, you have to do something with the water. Water doesn't go away.
Absolutely, yeah, and it flows back into streams, exposed streams, all the way down to the Sound.
Hence the definition, environmentally sensitive.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Now, let's see if we can run through those slides for a minute. There's streams that are indicated on the previous turn of the century, the last century, site maps, and then there's a map showing the chart that a couple of your supporters showed at the Common Council meeting a few weeks ago.
Yes, citizens to be heard.
Right, and it was it's very intriguing that the city would just even entertain this idea.
Well, what's even more interesting, that is by itself quite interesting, then we found out that in November, a report was delivered by Beth Evans, a well-known environmental consultant here in Westchester, indicating that indeed it is an environmentally sensitive site. And she went further than even our consultant's report did in mentioning there's wetlands there and they need to be examined.
Hold up that letter just in front of you. So
This is a letter dated November 28th, 2016 to Mr. John Callahan, Corporation Counsel of the City of White Plains, from Evans Associates. And we could have avoided substantial cost to the Gedney Association and others had this been publicized, interestingly, the mayor did not publicize this study, and there was a subsequent study by an environmental attorney in Manhattan, again for John Callahan, by an attorney, Mark Landman, dated February 16th. But these reports were not really provided to us and the public until March 10th. And this is reminiscent of the earlier application when the city had a consulting firm, a traffic engineering consultant, TRC, do a study, and FASNY was citing the study, and the public was not aware of it, and we had to seek it through Freedom of Information. So it makes me, as a longtime resident of the city and president of the Gedney Association, very, very distressed and skeptical as to what's going on in City Hall. And I have one other letter, which is dated March 7th, a few days before the mayor scheduled a meeting to vote on the environmentally sensitive site issue.
Whether or not the place,
whether it
area was environmentally or not.
But Zarin and Steinmetz, which are attorneys for the French American School, sent a letter to the mayor complaining about the issue. And I'm just going to read one sentence of the letter regarding the stipulation. He said, this is Mr. Zarin saying, such a determination would undermine one of the essential premises of the stipulation of agreement that FASNY's limitation on its reduced alternative school plan to Parcel A would only require a majority vote. There's nothing in the stipulation, the public stipulation that was that we saw, that mentioned this idea that it would only require a simple majority. Yeah. We always suspected that there was something here in the stipulation to get around. Why else were they asking? Well, they accepted, FASNY accepted that the site was an environmentally sensitive site in 2013. Now they're questioning it. Why? We suspected because they wanted to avoid the requirement under environmentally sensitive sites for a supermajority vote. And here, in a letter to the mayor from FASNY's attorney, is basically suggesting that they had some arrangement, that it would only require a simple majority. Really, very, very serious question as to what's going on.
Well, it's what I say, the leap of confidence, you know. I think what they're saying it's that we submitted this plan and you should review it, and since we worked this plan out, that you should approve it. As, you know, as a great coming together. But the stipulation says they only have to review it.
Right, but that's not what Mrs. Zarin is saying. Yeah. He's saying one of the essential, quote, one of the essential premises of the stipulation of settlement that FASNY's limitation on its reduced alternative site plan to Parcel A would only require a majority vote.
4-3 instead of 5.
So now we have a situation where the council, Common Council, did vote the other night, 5-2, that it is an environmentally sensitive site. Interestingly, Council President John Kirkpatrick and Councilwoman Beth Smeda voted against that resolution, which is very unusual indeed, in that they had 2 consultant reports that they commissioned, plus access to our report from all environmental specialists, and notwithstanding that, they still voted that it wasn't. So I guess they get a little pat on the back by FASNY. I don't know about the residents, but I think FASNY might give them a little pat on the back, like at least you tried.
Well, what do you think is going to happen at this public hearing on the revised site plan, which is taking place April the 5th at the White Plains Performing Arts Center at 6 o'clock?
In 2013, if I could just go back to the earlier application, they looked at a number of different alternatives, access points, because it's a very difficult place to access in the middle of a neighborhood. And they looked at Bryant Avenue, found that was unacceptable because of sight line issues and other issues. They looked at Ridgeway, and they found Ridgeway to be unacceptable. The Common Council, there's probably 7 or 8 findings in the Common Council's findings resolution with regard to the project, that it had to be located to North Street, an arterial road, Ridgeway, as you know, is under our comprehensive plan called a collector street, meaning only to access...
Other than taxes. Yeah.
Right, to act as an access point for the homes and the residents who live in that particular area. So it's very odd now that we have a new application and they're talking about coming into Ridgeway again.
Right.
We've engaged the services of a traffic engineer.
John, let's show a picture of the Hathaway Lane and the Ridgeway Country Club as it is now. And when the slide comes up, we can see that it's a two-lane road. It's a very sharp 90-degree angle turn into Hathaway, and well, you go ahead.
That intersection, FASNY is proposing no modifications to. Ridgeway is a two-lane road, very old road with many curves, sharp differential in grade, no breakdown lanes, no sidewalks, 17 other streets intersected from Old Mamaroneck Road to North Street. There's 100 curb cuts in that same area serving 68 homes plus 75 residents of Gedney Commons. And there's also Ridgeway Elementary School, which is very, very difficult to access. Ridgeway and Mamaroneck Avenue was one of the highest, I shouldn't say one of the highest, it's considered a high accident location in the city. So the intersection you're talking about, John, in response to your question, is really impossible. I think the traffic...
Hathaway Lane.
Hathaway Lane, a narrow 15-lane road,
yeah.
And Ridgeway, in many parts of it, just 30 feet wide, cannot handle 500 cars coming in the morning, over 500 probably, and 500 in the afternoon. Interestingly, traffic engineering can be all about statistics. They did a study a few years ago, the German school off North Street, and they found that each car coming to the school brought 1.3 students. FASNY picked a number out of the air with its analyses, and they said we're going to have 1.65 students per school. That's a 20% difference, dramatic difference, and one is based on experience, the other one is based on a little mumbo jumbo. But so safety is the key issue. FASNY says, well, we're going to require everyone to sign an agreement that they will come in and they won't come in through the neighborhood. That is patently unenforceable and will be violated by people.
Yeah, you were pointing out various routes to the school by going from Hathaway up from Bryant.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah.
Under the plan, this new plan, there will be, the essential part, I should say, of the former plan coming through North Street was it's a regional arterial road. Difficult still, but a regional arterial road. And they would not be able to come in through local streets to access a school. In this particular application, there's 25 different ways probably that FASNY parents could come in. If Ridgeway is congested, and it will be, there was a terrible accident there this past Friday night, and the eastbound lane was shut down completely. So they're going to go through the local streets that are very narrow. Gedney Esplanade, yeah. Heatherbloom, yeah. And all the other intervening streets. It's like, this plan is like Swiss cheese. There's no protection for the neighborhood. Our former Commissioner of Planning, who has acted as a consultant to the city on this, Sue Habel, has said access through, the main access to FASNY School through Ridgeway would change the character of the neighborhood, and it's a local collector street as identified in the comprehensive plan, and that's why they shifted it to the other school. The other thing, our Commissioner of Traffic, Thomas Soik, in a report in November of 2012 said, the city prefers having all residential intersections at a level of service, meaning the intersection, no worse than C, but the intersections that FASNY is proposing will affect its level of service D and in fact E. So it will be a congestion nightmare from Old Mamaroneck Road, because a lot of these people are going to be coming up from where many of the French nationals live down in Larchmont and Mamaroneck, either come up through Old Mamaroneck Road, the bypass from Scarsdale, or they'll come up Mamaroneck Avenue. Both turns are very difficult.
Sharp. And not only that, but we have no real details of this plan.
The only details that have come out, unfortunately, from this is that some very important people in elected office higher up want this to be done because there's some very powerful people associated with this application. The interesting thing, FASNY's PR person keeps saying those Gedney elitists, and yet these are people, the chairman of the school, his father is worth some $30-odd billion or something, and we're the elitists. The tuition there is I think, in the 30 thousands of dollars, but we're the elitists. Yeah. And interestingly, John, they keep saying it's a few people in Gedney. We have 8 neighborhood associations that are with us, essentially the whole, representing over 2,000 residents. The largest neighborhood associations in the south end of town, Gedney Association, the North Street Association, and the Rosedale Association, are all opposed to this project. We have a good number of other associations throughout the city who are also supporting us. We've got a unanimous vote from Fisher Hill Association saying this plan should be rejected. It would hurt the neighborhood. It would hurt the traffic in the neighborhood. And also another downtown association, the Carhartt Association, has also given their support to us and the other associations opposing this. And we have new ones joining us all the time. And we will, on the April 5th hearing, be able to show
that's 6 o'clock,
despite all the press releases saying it's just a few people in Gedney opposed to this, which is very false.
Right. Now, what will happen if they do not do an environmental review and perhaps approve it after that public hearing, or whenever they decide to close the public hearing? Do you feel this is something that will cause legal action on your part?
The mayor and Councilman Kirkpatrick, Martin, and Smeda have frankly been single-minded in getting this, despite what the residents and the overall community wants, have been pushing this. Push, push, push. I wouldn't be surprised whatever they do on this at all. We look to, I don't expect any of them to, I mean, if you see what Councilman Smeda and Kirkpatrick just voted, that it's not an environmentally sensitive site, when their own internal planning commissioner also said it was. Commissioner Gomez, Beth Evans' report, and this other report issued by an attorney in New York, and they still decided to vote it. So we have we just realize that we need people who will represent the citizens of White Plains going forward.
Okay, so it goes forward. You're looking at 10 years of construction. That's what they last said. And another one of your problems with the approval is they don't say, if approval will be granted, is they do not say whether they will expand to other sites.
Yes, there is the issue under zoning law, both White Plains and New York State zoning law. You cannot have segmentation. Segmentation is where you have, let's say, as you have here, a 130-acre property, and you say, well, we're only going to develop parcel A, and they don't tell you what parcel the other B, C, and D will be developed. That's a requirement under zoning law, that you have to show what you're going to be doing with the other parcels or the other remainder of the property, and the impacts.
Part of the agreement.
How does one assess the impacts of this if you don't know what the other part of the property? We've heard that they intend to, I mean, there's been rumors that they want to put residential there or what have you. We have what someone characterized as the incredible shrinking conservancy. Now it's been reduced. That's
what really intrigued me, because with this plan, the conservancy is down considerably.
It's down. It's almost laughable. I was a former planning official in Greenwich, Connecticut. We had a zoning provision in Greenwich where if you were going to keep open space, it had to be permanent. Here, there's no guarantee of permanence. It's only as long as they hold it. And now we're down to a conservancy, which is essentially the non-developable portion of the property. the lake, which could never be developed anyway, and the water courses that run adjoining it, and some other additional land, steep slopes around it. So it's partial, actually, that that would be considered as some great benefit to the city.
So if it's approved, will the Gedney Association sue to try and stop it?
Unquestionably.
Unquestionably.
Yes. We feel very strong that this endangers the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And under New York state law, when safety is at risk, if you will, and here I have 2 young children myself, this will be, as I said, like Swiss cheese, cars coming in from all different directions. Frankly, my wife said we have to move if this comes in. And I think a lot of people are very concerned about it from that perspective. I had a gentleman who wrote me a letter, wrote us a letter, the president of the Westchester County Association, and how wonderful this would be. And I wrote him back and I said, you raised your children in Bedford, now you've moved down to a condominium here in White Plains where you don't have young children. I think you would think differently if you were in my place and like many of the other parents and residents. He wrote back and acknowledged that and said, you know, you make a good point. So yes, it's wonderful to have a school location. We already have over, I don't know how many schools, both public and private, but this school will be bigger than Stepanak High School, and Stepanak High School is generates a lot of traffic. It's a regional school, and it's on an arterial main road, Mamaroneck Avenue.
With plenty of lanes for turning in.
There's nothing here. You would have to condemn probably 50 properties. One thing I think I've never heard the mayor and some of his lieutenants speak of is this is essentially a residential street, Ridgeway. From North Street to Old Mamaroneck Road, there's 68 private homes, there's 75 townhouses in Gedney Commons. There's a elementary school that kids have difficulty walking across that street right now, and there's no sidewalks on Ridgeway. It's, frankly, from a planning perspective, it's laughable, this proposal. And the fact that it has come this far, the mayor said when it was defeated in 2015 that he would defend this vehemently, although he didn't vote for it. But by the stipulation of agreement, we don't see that at all.
Now, you are in the real estate business.
Yes.
Why hasn't Fasney shopped this property? Is it just stubbornness on their part? Look, I'm not wanted. It's like you're trying to romance a girl, and the girl says, hey, you are a loser. Well, you have to move on.
I have represented numerous nonprofits, large nonprofits, over my real estate consulting career, and I've never seen any nonprofit ever buying a property on a wholly non-contingent basis. That's what Fasney did here. So they were kind of aggressive and kind of, we're going to get this thing done. At that point, they've spent a lot of money, perhaps wasted a lot of money. They've bought homes off North Street. I mean, frankly, if I frankly think what they've done is kind of reckless in terms, as a nonprofit, spending good funds when they should never have, everything should have been contingent on approvals here. So if I was a judge looking at this, I'd say, oh, you kind of looked at it, a nonprofit looking at it, buying a property without any contingencies, most unusual.
Is there a market for this parcel?
I think so. I think it's a difficult parcel to build upon because one of the reasons they made it a golf course is because there's a ribbon-like water features throughout the whole thing. It's threads through the neighborhood. I think the city, a number of years ago, rezoned it to 30,000 square feet per lot, 3/4 per acre. I think that kind of zoning and the comprehensive plan suggests that it should be very low-density residential zoning, if not a golf course, and that's really the appropriate use. I think it's not going to be easy to develop. I think, and I suggested this to the mayor, although of course, you know, he was looking straight ahead for Fasney, but I suggested why not look at what I would call, what we used to use up in Greenwich, Connecticut, a conservation zone, where you might drop down to lots of 15,000 square feet and preserve at least 40% of the property, not just the ponds, which you can't develop anyway, but the whole 40% of the entire parcel, which is much more substantial than FASNY is proposing for this so-called conservation area that is not a permanent open space. A conservation zone would be more appropriate. And the problem, the biggest problem with this whole plan has been obviously the density. There's going to be, I think FASNY projected when they were using North Street, there would be like 80 cars in the morning, or some low number of cars using Ridgeway in the morning. Now it's going to be over 500 in the morning, and it's going to be it's 1,000 during the day. And Ridgeway now backs up because of these highway applications and coming off of encouraging people to get off the Hutchinson River Parkway and come on to streets like Ridgeway. Ridgeway now often backs up, John, and I think we talked about this the other day, from Mamaroneck Avenue all the way to the club, the former Ridgeway Country Club, which is the FASNY property. And then they want to add more cars here. It doesn't work. As a matter of fact, Paul Schwartz, who's the former, well, not former, but I think he's the vice chair of the Democratic Party, he wrote us a letter. He's a member, he lives in Gedney, and he wrote it, and he says, has anybody noticed how the traffic since 2013 has risen dramatically? And we said, we've noted it too, and we think it's cars coming off of, and we spoke to Commissioner Soik about this too.
Yes, well, traffic in White Plains is something that is really, it's always there.
We've always had to confront cut-through traffic in Gedney, but with this, you won't have residential streets anymore, and people need to know that.
Wow. John Sheehan, president of the Gedney Association, you have been heard talking about the French American School of New York public hearing coming up on April the 5th, 6 o'clock at the White Plains Performing Arts Center, where the new site plan will be discussed by the public.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. John Bailey, good night.
Good night.
For People to be Heard.